Well, today we're going to add to our gnome family. We have Mrs. Gnome with her apple pie. Stay tuned and see how fun and easy this project is. All right, I thought we'd start by looking at the pieces in the gnome pattern, and then I will set up to start gluing together and we'll talk about the pattern a bit. But first, let's look at the pieces. This is about how your piece will be laid out on the PDF, the PNG or the PDF, depending on how you're cutting yours. So I've done a few changes to Mrs. Gnome this time. I left off her feet and I added a ruffle to the bottom of the dress. So we've got 4 back pieces that are the dress and the body and everything. We have 2 pie pan pieces because she's going to be holding an apple pie. So 2 pie pan pieces, 3 pieces that are the crust of the apple pie, 3 nose pieces, 6 hands, 3 left and 3 right, 6 braids, again 3 for the left, 3 for the right, and 3 hats. So I'm going to set up to glue. When I'm set up, I'll come back and we'll start gluing together and we'll talk about the rules and such. All right, so I'm going to start gluing these together, and as I do, I'll start talking to you about where to get the pattern and everything. And we've done this before. The patterns, like always, are free for you to download. You can go to the blog post for this video and get the link for the free downloadable pattern. That free pattern contains a PNG pattern for using with your Cricut or your Silhouette or whatever cutting machine you have that uses that type of pattern. And there's a PDF file for those of you that want to cut this by hand. You can make as many of finished gnomes as you wish, and you can do whatever you want to with the gnomes. All I ask is that you don't pass on, give away, or sell my pattern, because the only compensation I get for the time I spent designing this pattern and getting it all ready for you is the little bit from you clicking the blog post or clicking the video and watching that. I cut mine out of a medium weight white cardstock, and I paint the different pieces to the colors that I want them to be. I find that that's a lot more light stable than doing them out of colored cardstock, and then I don't have to have either so many files for you to download or as many pieces of paper as it would take to do that. And there's several pieces here, and that would be a lot of colors of paper you'd have to buy. So this tends to be the most economical, and I think it turns out the best. So I'm going to glue these together. When I get done, I'll have 2 hands, 2 hair braids, a body, nose, hat, body, and the pie plate, and the pie pan, and the pie. So when the glue is dry, and the glue will need to get completely dry before moving on to the next step. So I'm going to get this glued and let it dry, and then I'll be back. All right, my glue is dry, and I've laid these out. I've got some masking tape taped down on the ends with sticky side up. And I've put my pieces on it, grouped by color that I'm going to paint them. So the body or backing piece will be painted a bright red. The braids will be a golden yellow, I think it's called Golden Sunset. I have a flesh tone for the nose and the hands. I'm going to base coat the pie itself with a vanilla cream, and I'm going to base coat the pie pan with a gray, and then I'll paint the hat in green. Now, the only real trick here is make sure that you get your edges and that you don't use too much paint. And I do find it's the reason I put it on the tape. I had somebody ask me that a while back, and it's just so that they stay where I want them. They don't get misplaced. They don't, I don't have to hold on to them while I'm painting them. They stay still while I'm painting them, and I don't take these off of here until I start assembling, and then I only take off the ones I'm working with. So I'm going to start on camera, and then I'll finish off camera. But I'm using this. I thought it was fitting to use apple red for her dress. And we will be doing some other painting on these, like I'm going to define the ruffles with some darker and lighter paint once this is dry. And that's probably something I'll do after I start assembling. Some of the extra paints will be done after assembly, some will be done before. So let's get this part red. And then I'm going to I'll do the braids, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn the camera off because we all know how to paint. You don't need to watch me paint every bit. When the paint is dry, I'll come back. We'll do some of the detail painting on them when they get dry, and then we'll start assembly. So I'll be back in a sec. All right, I've put a second coat on the places I felt needed it, and now we're going to add some silver paint over the pie tin. I thought that would look nice. You can make yours any colors you want. I'm not going to shade the pie until I get the pie assembled. And then I've got a darker red. This is Anita's True Red. It's just a tiny bit darker, and that brush is not quite as small as I thought it was. I want, probably this one. I can take this little tiny brush, and I'm going to just make little lines up from where the ruffles come up, where the scallop kind of edge comes up, to make it look like a little bit of a shadow. And I might, when that dries, if it doesn't look like it's enough, I might go in with a slightly darker red, but I don't want to go too dark. So I'll see how that looks. I'm going to let these dry. It looks like I better coat the braids with a second coat of paint. I didn't second coat those. I'm going to second coat those. I'm going to let this dry completely, and then we can start assembling this. So I'll see you when it's ready to assemble. All right, my paint is completely dry. In fact, it dried overnight, and I did end up going back and painting the shadows in the ruffles with this wine color. The other just wasn't enough contrast. I didn't think it would show up on camera. So now let's do a little bit of pre-assembly before we start assembling the entire doll, the entire gnome. So we're going to start by putting down our braids. And I'm going to line them up with the bottom. I've just got a little bit of washi tape here. That way I know that they'll peel up easily, even if glue gets down on it, and it's a smaller space to work with. And you can angle your braids a little bit if you want to. I think I am today. The only thing is you have to make sure they don't stick out past the sides of the hat. And that is going to be fine. All right. So I've got my glue, a little bit of glue, and I just need glue on this end. If you've watched my gnome tutorials before, I bet you know what comes next. And obviously you could decorate her hat however you want. You could paint some designs on her dress. Now I'm going to take the nose, because I want to put the nose into its location before that glue, because I had a little bit of glue used out today. And that's fine. But if I let that dry, it would be very hard to get the nose up in that spot. So I'm going to slide the nose up there. And that needs to dry enough that it will hold together when we handle it. Let's also, at this point in time, assemble our pie. Now that little pie pan is a little more delicate because it's only 2 layers. I had some paint hang on to the edge, so I'm going to kind of brush that away with my thumbnail. And then make sure you're on the right side of the pie. Okay, that goes right there. Sorry, I had to get it over where I could actually see what I was doing to get that started to line up. Get our pie pan lined up with our pie. I'm going to kind of wipe away as much of that glue as I can, and I'm going to let that sit here also. Oops, come on. Making sure I haven't moved it. And I'm going to let that glue dry because we need to touch up the paint on that, do the browning on the crust before we glue it onto the gnome. So I'm going to let these pieces dry for a bit, not very long, and when they are, I'll come back and we can go ahead and put her the rest of the way together. All right, that glue has had some time to dry, so I'm going to start by taking, I've got the same Golden Sunset paint that I used for the braids, and a very tiny brush, and I want to dry it, kind of wipe it off on paper towel, and just kind of like we do when we are chalking our clay projects. There, that's all that needs. Now that can sit and dry. And let's get our gnome head glued on to, oops, gotta get this off of the tape. There we go. It was trying to stay on there. Pick where you want to put it. It's up to you how far up or down you make it. You put her head. Put plenty of glue on the areas that are going to touch. And get it on as straight and as centered as you possibly can, which for me, I know is sometimes a real struggle. So I'm going to let this stuff dry. When it's dry, I'll come back and we'll go to the next step. All right, my glue has set up enough that I can go on with the next step, and so is the paint. So now put some glue on the back of your pie. And you can put the pie anywhere you want. I think today I'm going to put it down below her braids because kind of slide it under that braid. And then her hands, being sure you've got them on correctly. The little thumb sticks up at the top on there, so you'll know that if you've got it right side up. And now once this glue is dry enough that there are no cloudy bits of glue showing, then we can put a clear finish on and see how this looks. So I'm going to get this set up exactly the way I want it, and then I'll let it dry. When it's dry, I'll be back. All right, my glue has dried, so I've got a little bit of satin Mod Podge out. And I'm just going to put a nice light, even coat of satin Mod Podge. I'm going to coat the front first. Once that is dry, I will coat the back side, making sure I hit the edges on both coats. That way the edges are even more protected. Once all the Mod Podge is dry, I will meet you over at the beachside bungalow and we'll see how Mrs. Gnome looks standing there with her apple pie with the rest of our apple themed decor we made in the last couple of years. So I'll see you there. All right, I've moved Mrs. Gnome over onto the front porch of the dollhouse with her apple pie. I think she looks wonderful with some of our other apple themed items we've made over the last couple of years. Be sure and hop over to the blog post so you can find the downloadable link so you can make your own gnome, as well as photos I've taken along the way as I made her. If you enjoyed the video, be sure and hit the like button. Leave me a comment. What kinds of things would you like to see in future videos? If you enjoy my content and haven't subscribed, I encourage you hit that subscription button and the notification bell so you know when I put up a new video. Thank you very much for watching today, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.